ABITPC was formed in 2001 as a result of a tourism symposium held here in Antigua. It was sort of a troubleshooting symposium trying to figure out what Antigua could do better for tourism.
I was one of the founding members with Martha Jerks and Robin Leach and a few other folks that we had brought in. We decided to really try and improve the tourism product of Antigua.
We were always environmentally oriented. So when this project came on stream and we learned about the fact that they were going to have a dolphin park here, I actually dubbed them dolphin prisons because that's what I believe they are, imprisoning innocent marine mammals. Our environmental group was very concerned. I had been a professional diver for, at that point, about 30 years. I had dived with wild dolphins all over the world. They're magnificent, intelligent marine mammals. I had never seen a dolphin in captivity.
There was a rumor going around that the government intended to bring them here and to allow for the operation of a swim with dolphin program right here in this little cove. And before we were able to take any action, they brought the dolphins in and opened the program to the tourists, so to anyone who wanted to go in. And a lot of people did want to go in and swim with the dolphins.
Looking at it from a government and other stakeholder point of view, it was kind of felt that it might have added something to the tourism product, providing some added attraction. And it was felt that Antigua perhaps was ideal for that, and we needed to move in that direction. But I believe that it was felt that this particular area would have been ideal because of its location, the surroundings, a number of facilities, accessibility.
Dolphinariums tend to place their sea pens in areas with high tourist traffic. You know, they want people to come and buy tickets to go swimming with them. And so they're not looking for the best place for the dolphins, they're looking for the best place for the tourists. And so because of that, sea pens for dolphinariums tend to be in areas where the water flow isn't necessarily very good, where it's sometimes very highly polluted. Sometimes they're right next to marinas and a lot of traffic. Then none of that's ideal for the dolphins.
Everybody in the island knew about Dolphin Fantaseas because Dolphin Fantaseas basically was the only company on the island to offer a swim with the dolphin program. And we were all mortified about it.
Dolphin Fantaseas was originally the company that went into Antigua and Barbuda. And they were pretty fly by night, if you ask me. They were just out to make a buck. But they didn't last very long, and they sold out to Dolphin Discovery pretty quickly. And Dolphin Discovery is a fairly large company. It's got a lot of different dolphinariums, including in the US. So they're the ones who want to come back to Antigua. And, you know, Dolphin Fantaseas, as far as I'm aware, is long since gone. But I got involved in this issue in the Caribbean in general through outreach. Some folks in the Caribbean contacted me because I was very active in this campaign, and I am a dolphin biologist, so I have some value to offer to the campaign that other advocates do not. And so I was contacted by folks in the Caribbean to try to help them out, to stop the expansion of these swim with the dolphin facilities. They were spreading across the Caribbean like a cancer.
We really didn't know how to go about challenging something this big. And so I was actually contacted from overseas by a dolphin crusader, a girl named Gwen McKenna. She came to our rescue kind of, and she suggested that we meet with a gentleman named Rick O'Berry. And Rick O'Berry is probably the most outspoken protector of dolphins in the world. And in his youth, he was the highest paid dolphin trainer. He trained the flipper dolphins. And when one of them died in his arms, he realized this is wrong. we are incarcerating these animals for our benefit and just for the almighty dollar. And this is not right. And he vowed to spend the rest of his life protecting dolphins, which he's done.
Well, it was Martha who contacted me. She was trying to stop this dolphinarium, and she enlisted the help of John Fuller and Eloise Green and so many other people on the island. It became a grassroots movement to stop this dolphinarium, this dolphin swim program. And by the way, this issue, this dolphin captivity issue, isn't just about the dolphins. It's also about people, especially children. Children who go through these dolphinariums and receive a dose of bad education.
As a group, we looked at the bigger picture. And the first thing that we were really concerned about was the fact that environmentally, it could be a bad idea. And it turned out to be that and more. In fact, the environmental concern that we had, which has been proven scientifically, is that these open sea pens where dolphins are kept, the waste from the dolphins as it goes out and is washed onto live coral reefs surrounding the area, it actually acts like a fertilizer on the reef, and there's a particular algae that it causes it to grow at a fast rate, and it literally smothers the living coral polyps, and it kills the live coral.
To have them in captivity really was heartrending to all of us. But not only that, where they had them, they had the dolphins down by McKinnon's, just across from the pond, which is a really swampy area. So it was not very clear waters for the dolphins anyway. Of course, that put our antenna up, and we decided to really, pursue it and see, what we could do to try and save these creatures from the conditions that they were being held in captivity in.
Dolphins are large, wide-ranging mammalian predators in the ocean, and they are highly social, very intelligent, and they can do a lot of damage to people if they want to. In the wild, they've only been known to injure people a couple of times. They've actually killed somebody, but those people, the young man who was killed was actually tormenting the dolphins. But in captivity, a lot of people have been injured. Just because they're large predators who are very much at home in the ocean, and we are not, we're terrestrial mammals, so we're very awkward in the ocean, that's a recipe for problems for us if we're in a confined space with them. Dolphins in captivity tend to be less healthy because they're not as active. They cannot be as active. They're in a confined space. They don't get to hunt, and so they're fed dead fish, which has lower nutritional value. They tend to be fed vitamins to try to make up for that, which is not really a great solution. They're stressed. I think they're always under some low level of stress, and when a lot of strangers get into the water to swim with them, that increases the stress levels. And when you're stressed, you can't fight off illness as easily. That's true for humans, it's true for all mammals, it's true for dolphins. And so I think they get sick more often.
We found out that not only had the government given Dolphin Fantaseas permission to operate this swim with dolphin program here, that they also gave them permission to capture dolphins in our waters for the purpose of supplying dolphins for this program and for selling them internationally.
Dolphin Fantaseas were going against all of the provisions that were laid down in the treaty that was signed. At that time, we were working very closely with the government because we saw what was going on. First of all, we were opposing the dolphins being held in captivity, and also the conditions that they were being held in, and also what was happening because of what the dolphinarium owners had done to destroy the natural waterways. So the government was on our side because they were also pretty appalled at what was going on. And basically Dolphin Fantaseas didn't care less.
We would make use of the treaty for the purpose of protecting the populations of dolphins within our waters and oblige them to carry out those necessary preconditions before they capture dolphins. And having failed to do that, we went to the High Court to ask for an injunction to restrain Dolphin Fantaseas and the government from capturing and allowing the capture of dolphins within our waters. At one stage, the government agreed to withdraw permission for the capturing of dolphins in our waters. They withdrew it, for which we were very grateful as a start. But they insisted on the Swim with the Dolphin program continue.
It was in the media that the dolphins weren't being treated properly. The place was too small for the dolphins, and the government said that they're going to do something about it. And that's where the resistance came in, from the folks who owned the Dolphin Fantasy. So I know that the people of Antigua and Barbuda, they were up in arms about the way the dolphins were being handled.
We had the government on our side at one point. We had all the communities on the side. We had all the restaurants and hotels in the area on our side. And also because of the educational programs that we had gotten into, we brought Rico Barry down also to give talks. He is an expert on the dolphins, to give talks on the dolphins. We had a petition that we had done, and which we shared with the public at large. And so it had started creating quite a bit of animosity among the locals as to what was going on.
The next thing we were very concerned about, which also proved to happen, we were concerned with the terrible image from an eco point. And sure enough, the big organizations that are anti-captivity for marine mammals and these animal rights groups, they came out in force against Antigua. We were on websites all over the place, in a negative tone. So sadly, that brought a lot of bad publicity to Antigua.
Lump, of which I was a member at the time, Lump had put out a call and tried to get an expert to come in to talk about the same dolphin situation. And that expert was declared persona non grata. Couldn't come to the country.
I went to the airport in Miami, and I was about to board the American Airlines flight, and I was the last one on the plane, and somebody from American Airlines literally pulled me off the plane. I found out that somebody from the government, from Immigration Service, had contacted American Airlines and told them I was a terrorist and that the plane couldn't land with me on it. Well, the talk went on anyhow, and I was able to do my talk and questions and answers because of the radio station that broadcasted it all over the island, which was more effective than if I had showed up. So that worked well.
People wonder what it is about dolphinariums that we're so focused on. Are we being speciesist? Are we playing favorites and ignoring other animals while we focus on dolphins? The real reason why we do focus on dolphins and whales in captivity is because they are amongst the very few zoo and aquarium animals that are still forced to perform. They are trained to perform circus tricks for entertainment. That makes them very different from chimpanzees or elephants or giraffes or any of the other species you'll see in a zoo. None of those species still perform. They used to, historically, back in the 50s and 60s, but that became that was not in fashion or just wrong, giving the wrong conservation message a long time ago. By the 70s, 80s, 90s, they weren't doing that anymore. And yet dolphins and whales still perform. Not only do they perform, but they perform for a very high ticket price. It can cost $100 to get into a dolphinarium. To swim with dolphins, $150 easy. So once you put that kind of profit margin into the equation of keeping wildlife in captivity, their welfare is not going to be your top priority. They'll still argue that it is, but logically it can't be. Logically, the most important thing has to be profit, has to be making a living, has to be making a profit so that you can distribute it to your shareholders if you're publicly owned, or simply to live a lavish lifestyle if you're a private dolphinarium owner. You're not going to be doing this if you're in it to make a living, not to make a living. You're going to charge a lot of money.
And this happens a lot in the Caribbean. The dolphinariums come in quietly. They promise everybody jobs. They say it's going to be good for tourism, and none of that is true, actually. The dolphinariums employ a few local people, but the lion's share of the money goes in their pocket.
The bigger environmental problem that nobody foresaw, because the dolphin enclosure bordered the salt pond on the land side of the location, and nobody knew that illegally the natural drain that led to the sea for the salt pond was blocked. And the reason they blocked it is because it was brackish water, it was a bit dirty, it wasn't really attractive water to swim in. So they literally blocked it. And then when Antigua had excessive heavy rains, there was major flooding in that area. The villages in the surrounding area were, people couldn't get to their houses. There were hotels and restaurants along Runaway Bay that were completely cut off. It was a really serious problem. And that is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. Because when it was discovered that the drain had been illegally blocked, there was near rioting on Antigua because Antiguans heard it on the radio and they came out in numbers to the dolphin park, shaking the fence and yelling at the Mexicans inside for what they had done in blocking this drain. And I'm sure that they didn't realize what they were doing. I mean, the serious consequences that happened, but it was a nightmare.
The dolphinarium really escalated into a very massive dispute, I should say. Back in 2004, we had some very bad weather in Antigua. We had very, 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 very heavy rainfall. And what happened is the dolphinarium, where they had it, which was across the waterway from the McKinnon's pond, in order for them to prevent the swampy pond waters draining into the dolphinarium, they had blocked off the natural waterway.
It's like Deus ex machina. The McKinnon swamp overflowed right here, and it was like a river coming out here with all the dolphins in there. And a movement started amongst the people of Antigua, and there were protests on the street here against what was happening.
I think the communities are wrong. First of all, their businesses were impacted because, folks couldn't get freely to and from the restaurants and the hotels in the area. The folks who were living in the area had to, pass through these waters, either walking or driving through these waters. A lot of the time they had to divert the traffic because they just couldn't pass. So I think it escalated into measures that needed to be taken control of.
I just received a call that there's some activity taking place down at the Dolphinarium. Let's drop what we're doing and go down there and see what we can see and if we can help out. And tell you what, people, you need to come join us down there. We aren't entities unto ourselves. We all in this together, so meet out down the Dolphinarium right now.
And the pressure became quite strong against Dolphin Fantasies. And with the crowds of people that came to support us against the project, they buckled.
The government realized, due to the severe flooding, that they were going to have to open the drain and the culvert to allow this flooding to drain. And the Attorney General, the then Attorney General, Justin Simon, called ABITPC in for a meeting, and I was involved in that meeting, and asked if they seized the dolphins, would we assume responsibility for them? And we actually were prepared to, and we took some steps that, had that happened, we would have done that. But in the end, Dolphin Discovery realized that this was going on, and they flew in 2 charter planes and took the dolphins out, literally early the following morning.
They left in the middle of the night. I got a phone call like at about midnight one night saying, "John, they have some big plane up here and they're loading the dolphins in the plane." And they did. They loaded them and left with them.
Everywhere that these exploiters of innocent dolphins have gone in the Caribbean, they've left a trail of devastation behind them. It's really been horrific, because not only when you put dolphins inside a concrete prison tank do you start wrecking the reefs, the valuable reefs that you have around the islands, but it turns out that these things always tend to be investment rip-offs for local people. They come in with huge promises, and they then suck up investment money from local island folk around the Caribbean. And as we know in Antigua with the original dolphin park, they left the people of Antigua holding the bag for $500,000 in debt. So we just don't need to see these people exploit innocent animals by putting them in prison.
My own personal view is that as far as the concept of the dolphin being entrapped and kept in and so on, I am totally not in favor of that.
In the West, in general, including in the Caribbean, there's been both a stabilization in the number of dolphinariums and even in some places a decline. So we're actually making progress in terms of raising public awareness of the welfare impacts, the negative welfare impacts on dolphins in captivity.
Cruise ships are refusing to go to islands that have a swim with dolphin program because they have finally realized that it's good business for them not to support swim with dolphin program. But could it happen here again? Yes, it could. But we would attack it on the same grounds as we did before.
There are many dolphins and whales in our waters, and I think coming from Dominica, we're very eco-friendly. We're very conscious of the wildlife, the marine wildlife. We go out and we see them in the wild, and I know that it's possible to do it here as well, because whenever I go boating, most of the time you also encounter dolphins along the way. So I would always oppose.
So this story had a happy ending, I think. And it just goes to show that you can win. You can win if you can get a grassroots movement going, question authority, question and challenge the politicians who are issuing permits to capture your dolphins, issuing permits to bring captive dolphins to your island. It pays to speak up, to rise up against these things. You can win.
Prior to the change of government, there was a law that was on the table that just about passed that would ban any marine mammals from display in Antigua and Barbuda. And I would have been delighted had we been innovative, as a number of countries have, to have passed a law such as that. And I understand that that law was presented, I think it was 3 times, to the cabinet. Minister McGinley at the time was the one who was spearheading that effort. And I would really like to call on the Honorable Gaston Brown and his government to review this law that, I mean, it's still there somewhere. I don't know what happens to a pending law, but I would call on them to revisit this and consider it for the good of Antigua and Barbuda. I would love to see that for our country personally.